Hey there guys, it's Luke, and in this video we're going to talk about how to interrupt someone when you have something to say. Now of course this is useful for English in the workplace, but also for something like a debate. So we'll be learning these English phrases from clips of presidential debates since they've been going on recently, and by the end of this lesson you'll know how to cut in and say what you want to say. Before we get started with that, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see future videos, and make sure to check out my full courses in the links in the description. All right, let's begin. If you have not been watching the presidential debates, or you've never seen a presidential debate, what's wrong with you? I don't get you. No, that's fine. That's totally okay. I've been watching them. And in them, candidates are always interrupting each other, stopping each other to say what they want to say, right? That's how debates go. Now, there are polite ways to do this and less polite ways to do this. So we're going to look at some clips from previous debates, like the recent one in New Hampshire and Iowa and some others, to pick out these phrases we can use to interrupt politely and less politely. Now, these are extremely useful and very common. Let's start, if I may, with if I may. Now listen for the variations of this one.
Sir, have you seen what's happened to Aleppo?
If I might finish my question.
Okay, so it hasn't fallen. Take a look at it.
Well, there are 250,000 people still living there and being slaughtered.
That's right.
You also
and they are being slaughtered because of bad decisions.
If I may just finish here.
And you asked the question about leverage. If I can just respond to that one. The leverage? Are you kidding?
Okay, so if I could finish. I have the bill.
That is absurd.
If I could respond, George.
You get a response, then we're going to broaden out the discussion.
Okay, number one.
I think you know that I don't agree with some of these proposals up here, George. So I'm talking
Which
about
ones?
if I could respond to some of the proposals from my friends.
So as you can see there, we can say that we need to say something by starting with if I. In this case, if I could just respond, George. Or, okay, so if I could finish, I have a bill, but is that polite? The answer is yes, usually. Usually it's polite. We can often insert if I just before we want to say the thing we need to say. And it's usually used either to stop someone else from continuing or just after someone else has finished talking. A few variations of this. If I can just say, if I may just mention, if I could just respond to that, if I could just finish my point. So all of these are very common variations of this if I that we can put in when we need to. And it fits in debates, but it also fits in daily conversation, especially in the workplace, especially when we're kind of in a complicated conversation where we sometimes need to disagree. The next one that you'll often hear in these debates is let me.
Okay, can I respond
Senator
to that,
Sanders,
David?
Senator Sanders,
Can I
please.
respond to that?
Just
Because
say this, if I might. Like Joe and others, I also heard the arguments in terms of the war in Iraq.
well, let me say this. I agree with Pete Buttigieg that it's about judgment, not tenure.
First, let me say, America, it's great to be back on the debate stage. Thank you.
There we go.
But let me just say this. I think the question started off with Secretary Clinton's critique. I think that is what happened. But let me just pick up on a point that Tom made, which is absolutely right.
Mayor Buttigieg, let me just press further on this, though, because President Trump has signaled in a general election campaign he will celebrate his willingness to order that strike.
Notice here, it's let me say this if I might, and let me just say, let me just pick up on a point that Tom made. These are kind of announcements before we say something that we really want to make sure people understand. Let me pick up on a point that Tom made is very interesting because it's a way to sort of transition from what another person said to what we want to say. Sort of like grabbing that and continuing it, which is also a way to show that we're listening carefully. We can also say, let me just touch on, let me just mention, or let me just pick up on, or let me be clear, or even when we want to stop someone from saying something, we could say, let me stop you right there. Although, that last one, let me stop you right there, that could be a little blunt, and it could be considered rude in some cases. The next one is listen. It's one of my favorites. I use it a lot.
Yeah. Tom Perez came out here and he said, listen, we were beginning a 90-day sprint.
Any sense about this should be concerned.
That line's getting a little bit old, I must say. Listen.
It's a good one, though.
I would like to.
Well describes the problem.
It's not an accurate one at all.
Listen, I think that it really speaks to a larger issue, and I'll speak to the larger issue. I believe that...
Listen, I would like to. He came out and said, listen, we're at the beginning of a 90-day sprint. But listen, I think that it really speaks to a larger issue. This one is simply a way to start, and it doesn't have a very strong meaning. It's actually quite conversational. Listen, I use it all the time. Listen, I really do. I mean, listen, I use it too much. I probably use it too much. It's a little thing that encourages people to pay attention and gives you a nice way to start whatever you want to say. It's useful. All right, so the last one we're going to talk about is my wife's favorite. She says she uses it all the time. I use it fairly often as well. It's great because it shows humility, that you want to share your view, but also that you have an open mind and you're willing to listen. This one is, correct me if I'm wrong.
Tonight, what do you say to those families?
Well, this is what I say, if I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong. If you go to a gun store and you legally purchase a gun, as I understand it, what you're really talking about is not what Secretary Clinton is responding to. As I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but what you are essentially saying, what people are saying, is that if somebody who is crazy or a criminal or a horrible person...
We use this at the beginning of whatever we want to say. We might say, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're not really sure what to do about blah, 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 blah. We often say what we think is right, or what we understand another person to have said. Sometimes we'll say, now, I may be wrong, or I could be wrong. In that clip, Bernie uses 3 things like this. This is what I want to say. If I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, I should do it in a Bernie accent. This is what I want to say. If I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong. That's, Bernie has a Brooklyn accent. If I understand it could mean I admit that I may not understand it. This is what I want to say is to announce that an opinion is coming. Get ready for my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong suggests openness to the other person. Hey, I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. We can also say, what you're essentially saying is, or so what you're saying is, or as I understand it, then we just say what we think the other person means. And if we're right, they feel respected. They feel we actually listened. And if we aren't right, then they can clarify what they mean. Maybe they can repeat themselves or say it in a different way. Okay, guys, so that's it for this video. Hopefully these phrases will be useful to you in the next debate or in-depth conversation you have. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments, and also let me know in the comments what other situations you'd like me to talk about. Remember to hit the like button and also hit subscribe. If you're washing the dishes, you can just do it with your nose. That's what I do. Sometimes I hit the pause button with my nose because my hands are wet, or I hit subscribe with my nose. You can do that. Why not? Hit it with your nose. Hit like and subscribe with your nose. And also, don't forget to check out my courses in the links in the description. All right, see you guys in the next one.